On day 2 of the Barcelona preseason shakedown, January 2026, Max Verstappen climbed into the RB22 for the first time in wet conditions and immediately knew something was wrong. Not a vague sense of discomfort, not the uncertainty every driver feels in a new car at the start of a new season. Something specific, something physical, coming through his hands. He reported it to his engineers before the session was over. That was 4 months before anyone fixed it. 4 months of races, of qualifying sessions, of debrief after debrief, of Red Bull's technical staff, one of the most sophisticated groups of engineers in the sport, failing to isolate something their driver was describing to them in precise terms from the very first lap. And not because they weren't trying. Pierre Wash, Red Bull's technical director, told Autosport after Miami exactly what those 4 months looked like. First, we had to make sure that he had an issue. Then it was about identifying where it was coming from, and that takes a long time. And after that, it was about fixing the problem. I'm sorry that we didn't fix it before. A technical director, publicly apologizing to his driver. That is not standard paddock language. That is the language of someone who knows exactly what those months cost. Because here is what the steering problem actually did to Verstappen. Not in the standings, but in the cockpit. The way he described it to Sky Sports F1 before Miami, I felt like a total passenger in the car. It could understeer, it could snap on me, it could feel different from one session to the other without even touching parts. A total passenger in a Formula 1 car for 4 months. If you're enjoying this deeper side of Formula 1, the side beyond lap times and podium celebrations, consider subscribing. With that said, let's begin. For most drivers, that sentence describes a difficult patch. For Verstappen, it describes something closer to a fundamental breakdown. Everything that separates him from the rest of the grid, the ability to feel grip levels through his fingertips, to sense the rear moving before it actually goes, to commit to a corner while everyone else is still deciding, depends entirely on the steering telling him the truth. A rack feeding inconsistent information doesn't just make the car slower, it makes Verstappen a different driver, which is why what happened during the April break matters far beyond the lap time it recovered. Red Bull replaced the complete steering rack and every supporting component. Front wing, brake ducts, floor, side pods, engine cover, diffuser, and rear wing were all changed in what Formula 1's own technical analysis described as a very major project. Cockpit modifications, steering rack, everything touched at once, integrated, deliberate, the work of a team that had finally found the root cause and wasn't taking any chances with the fix. Verstappen tested the package at a Silverstone filming day. He felt the difference from the first lap, and Miami made it public. Front row qualifying, alongside Antonelli, ahead of Leclerc, Norris, Russell, Hamilton, and Piastri. His words in the paddock afterwards were quiet, but they cut through everything. Honestly, it's everything. Because before nothing really worked, I felt like a total passenger. Now I can finally drive how I want to drive. 7th in the championship, best engine in F1, 113 points from the lead, and for the first time in 2026, driving how he wants to drive. The gap between those facts is the story of this season. Barcelona was supposed to be the reality check. Low-speed circuits had flattered the upgraded RB22. Monaco and Miami don't punish high-speed weaknesses the way a proper all-round circuit does. Red Bull brought a revised front wing, more cambered flap, modified end plate geometry, targeted, surgical, nothing like the scale of Miami. And Friday practice suggested the skeptics were right. Monahan admitted the car was still missing balance and grip around the demanding circuit. The air temperature in Barcelona on Friday afternoon was 32 degrees. The track surface was pushing 50. The tires were overheating, and Verstappen was more than 7/10 off the pace. Then Saturday happened. He qualified 5th, the gap to pole 3.5 tenths. In China, it had been more than a second. In Japan, similar. And Verstappen couldn't fully explain it. I don't really understand how that gap suddenly became half of what it was. We changed a few things, but we didn't completely overhaul the setup. A 7/10 deficit on Friday afternoon, 3.5 tenths on Saturday. Same circuit, same car, different Verstappen. The race confirmed what qualifying suggested and added a detail that the results didn't show cleanly. Verstappen finished 4th, promoted by Antonelli's power unit failure and Leclerc's crash. Pure pace still placed Red Bull behind Mercedes, Ferrari, and McLaren. Hajar finished 6th, but a lap down. Verstappen was direct. We're still the 4th fastest team, maybe a little bit better, but it's still not where we want to be. But according to people familiar with how Mercedes analyzed the Barcelona data, the number that drew attention in their debrief wasn't the result, it was the trajectory. Race by race, since Miami, the gap in race conditions has been compressing, not dramatically, consistently, measurably, in the direction that matters. And the development picture sitting underneath that trajectory is the part that makes it significant. Red Bull cannot touch their engine. The ADUO ruling has frozen their power unit development while Mercedes receives 1 token to improve, Ferrari 2, Honda, and Audi 2 each. The only path available is the chassis, and according to people familiar with the team's internal development plans, the chassis still has significant headroom that hasn't been unlocked yet. The steering rack was the prologue nobody was supposed to see. Here's what the standings don't show you. Red Bull Bull started this season roughly a second per lap behind Mercedes, by Miami, closer to half a second, by Barcelona, compressing further on a circuit that was supposed to expose them. 3 consecutive race weekends, same direction, getting smaller every time, and they're doing it without touching the engine. Every token Mercedes collects, every improvement Ferrari and Honda are banking, none of it addresses what Red Bull is actually fixing. They're rebuilding the chassis on a roadmap their own people describe as still having significant headroom. According to people close to the technical direction at Red Bull, they're nowhere near the ceiling yet. Mercedes knows this. The team that has won every race this season is watching a development curve they recognize, because they've been on the right side of one before. They know what it looks like from the front, and they know the time to worry isn't when the gap closes. It's when the rate of closing starts accelerating. By Barcelona, according to sources familiar with how the data was being discussed internally at Mercedes, that rate had their attention. Verstappen is 7th, 113 points behind Antonelli. 15 races left. The mathematics are brutal, and yet the conversation in the paddock has quietly shifted since Miami. Not about whether Verstappen can win 2026, about what Red Bull look like if the trajectory holds. Drop it in the comments. If Red Bull keep developing at this rate and Verstappen starts converting it into results, what does this season actually look like by the summer break? Because right now, Mercedes have every reason to be confident, and at least one reason to be paying very close attention.